started somewhere in 1957 when the forerunner of the European Union was developing. And in parts of Latin America and Africa, we saw how there was a recourse to import substitution industrialization, which tended to domesticate development. And this phase terminated actually somewhere around the 70s and 80s when the momentum for multilateral liberalization gathered and therefore regionalism suffered. The second phase actually started in the first half of the 1980s when GATT was preparing to give way to the WTO, and a number of free trade agreements globally were signed. And in some cases, there were countries that belonged to about 10 free trade agreements. And that period seemed to have also been a period where Africa made significant inroads into regionalism, especially when we look at the 36th OAU summit in Lomé in 2000, which tried to accelerate the formation of an African economic and political union. So that was the second phase, or the second wave of regionalism. There's a third wave which is going on today, but Africa seems to be marching time as other parts of the world are making deep inroads. And there are very important explanations for that. Part of them is historical, but part of it is the continuing neo-colonial domination of Africa. As I did indicate earlier on, if Africa integrated, she would be too big to fail. There's no question at all why I was in Nigeria last 2 weeks by road, and Togo and Benin, you cross those countries in few hours. So it looks like those countries are not even viable countries. Why do we still continue to maintain our national sovereignties, stubbornly refusing to give them up in the wider interest of regionalism, at a time when all the tendencies around us indicate that nations are coming together? Now, the most renowned example of integration is the European Union, where a series of countries together formed a new political body, with each member state sacrificing certain powers, such as the right to mint their own currencies and so on. To be honest and to admit, such agreements are not uncontentious because they contain certain disadvantages in addition to the advantages. Now, if, for example, we take gains in trade, trade gains are one of the major advantages of regional integration for individual member states. Besides the European Union, the other trade-related regional integration policies include numerous agreements in Africa. For example, the Southern African Customs Union Agreement, the Multilateral Monetary Agreement, and the Indian Ocean Commission. In various ways, these agreements make moving goods across borders easier. This leads to gains in trade. Secondly, it leads to economies of scale. Regional integration agreements expand the market for goods and therefore allow companies, factories, and industries to produce more of their goods and sell to other members of the bigger market. This creates something that economists call the economies of scale, which I've mentioned, where the per unit price of producing a good decreases as the total quantity of that goods production increases. Fewer trade barriers also allow increased competition, which in turn causes less productive companies within a particular industry to close. This is an overall net positive because it leads to greater productivity within an industry, because only the companies that produce goods the most quickly and efficiently survive amid increased competition. These advantages notwithstanding, regional integration could also engender some disadvantages. For example, limited physical capabilities of the states. Some regional integration agreements that involve the creation of a common currency, for example, and the most notable one is the European Union, lead to fiscal crisis. It can lead to fiscal crisis. Without regional integration, individual countries can control the supply of their own currency to suit their nation's economic conditions. When a higher entity controls the currency, as it is the case in the euro, the individual countries have no power to vary the strength of their currency when the economy weakens. This occurred when Greece, for example, faced those national difficulties and financial difficulties, and its economy suffered. If Greece could have printed more currency to pay its bills, the country's financial situation would not have been that weak. So the European Union, however, controlled Greece's currencies, which left it with very little power to fix its own problems. And so this is one difficulty with integration. And about 2 years ago, I was in Johannesburg, and I met some South African scholars who were dead against regional integration on the ground that South Africa was not ready to see its sovereignty to others. They wanted to maintain. And I remember one professor asking me, what has Botswana got in common with Burkina Faso to warrant cooperation, to warrant integration? I think these are very serious questions, and some people think that once you come into a union, economic union, the eventual thing will be a political union. You lose your sovereignty, and then you are not able to deal with your problems your own way because of the bigger entities that you belong to. And Greece is cited as an example. The second difficulty is with the kind of cultural centralization that may go with integration. Regional integration has that non-economic disadvantage, especially strong integration like the European Union can lead to loss of unique minority cultures within a region. The European Union has a series of languages that it deems to be the official languages of the EU government. These do not include minority languages spoken by remote communities in Europe, Welsh, Breton, Frisian, and others. These languages in turn get a little protection from the state and reduce barriers to movement across countries within the European Union. And this kind of cultural centralization is seen as a problem by many countries. In fact, in my own country, Ghana, there are some languages that are dying because the business and commerce is done in the main languages. And so these languages are dying. And so what regional integration is likely to do is, rather than empower difference, it will dissolve it, and smaller minority languages may suffer. Now, Africa. What has been the historical perspectives of regional integration? I have two interesting proverbs here. The first proverb, which is an African proverb, I don't know which country exactly, it says that if you want to go quickly, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. Now, this one says that if we go alone, we may go quickly, but not far. To go far, go together. So what it says in effect is that Africans can achieve whatever they want to achieve if they cooperate. There's a second proverb by the Ethiopians. It says that if spiders unite, they can tie down a lion, which means that in unity lies strength. So if Africans would unite, they can go far. And if they cooperate, no problem will be unsurmountable. They can defeat everything. Now, if we look at Africa, you will see that the old model of regionalism was actually cast in the ideological paradigm of Pan-Africanism. And we all know that Pan-Africanism actually started in the diaspora after the World War, after the abolition of slave trade, when blacks in the United States did not experience social emancipation. And so, in some cases, the conditions of the blacks were more difficult than it was under slavery. Because under slavery, you belong to the slave master. He fed you, he housed you. Now it's illegal for him to keep you, you are free. There's no social program for you. So they were dying on the street. And that's how come the Tuskegee Institute and others started thinking about the condition of the African. And two main streams of Pan-Africanism emerged. One by Du Bois, which was the integrationist part of Pan-Africanism. And he established his National Association for the Advancement of Colored Peoples, which was saying that let black people stay in the US and they begin to fight through education and business to achieve social emancipation. Opposed to the integrationist idea of Du Bois was the idea of the movement of Marcus Garvey, the Universal Negro Improvement Association and the Communities League, which believed in the Back to Africa project. My argument is that both the integrationist and the Back to Africa project were both expressions of Pan-Africanism. But by 1945, after the war, Nkrumah and Padmore had met at the Fifth Pan-African Congress. And if you look at the resolutions of the Fifth Pan-African Congress, a number of things were said. First of all, Nkrumah and Padmore calls to be written in the resolutions that Africans had the right to use all means at their disposal, including violence, to liberate themselves from colonial rule. Secondly, they tried to say that Africa should develop along socialist lines. That was understandable because